Hi everyone. With ED announcing a slight delay to the release of the F model Chinook, more of my time can be spent watching the Euros. Okay, so seriously, it was a bit quiet leading up to the planned release day, so to be honest I wasn't too surprised when ED announced that there is, should I say, a slight delay. For me, I'm okay with that, and it's not all bad, especially as now that we know what the early access features are actually going to be, because before that it was kind of from speculation from the forums and things like that. We're also knowing what's the after access or after early access features, should I say, are going to be as well. So I wanted to take a look at what's on offer and then to break it down for you. First of all, if we take the statement from ED, it reads as follows: we are preparing to launch the DCS CH47F into early access, along with a new DCS Afghanistan map. Much of the remaining work focuses on the cargo carrying functions, damage model, flight control systems and avionics. We are also working on the countermeasure systems and door gunners. Furthermore, we are pleased to introduce new pilot models that will enhance the visual authenticity of the cockpit experience. Based on the results from recent internal and external testing, we've decided to move the launch date to the 3rd of July 2024. So it looks like the 3rd of July is going to be a big update, right? So it's not just the introduction of Chinook, but there's also lots of other things, the Afghanistan map. Probably going to have to make a lot of extra space on my SSD, I think, to make up for it. Right. So let's move on to the early access features then. I say early access, to be honest, I kind of look at this as almost like a paid beta, but yeah, okay, I don't want to get into those forum type discussions on this. So first of all, it says a highly detailed external and internal modelling, including cockpit and cargo hold. So we have seen many examples of this in the trailers. And the aircraft, yeah, it does look good. Yes, there is the odd typo or item missing. So, for example, looking at you, pitch links. But overall, it is a good looking model. Next then, ability to load and unload cargo from the internal bay based on weight and volume. So we did know that this was a feature, but there's still nothing we can see other than an open cabin and a Humvee that, as we saw from the previous video, from what we found out from the forum, was actually driven in there. Okay, it's not like a button, like a feature that you could activate through the menus. So I imagine it's going to be probably like a simple kind of floor plan that you can click on. It's probably going to look very, very similar to the stores page, right? So when you're adding drop tanks or missiles or whatever it is to your aircraft, similar kind of setup, do the drop downs, but it's just that you're going to be presented with some slightly different kind of graphics, I think, for the Chinook for that. The next one then, single point sling loading. So this does tally up with the videos where we only saw the center hook being used. It is a shame we can't have all three from the start, but it's not as simple as adding a hook and then just duplicating it and adding another two, so we've got three in total, right? Why do I think it is? Well, from knowing the aircraft, I know they've got different load capacities. They can operate independently, and then I suppose more from like the software side of things, so to make it work in our simulation, it's kind of like, how are you going to make all of that kind of interact when you're hanging three loads off the bottom? They could be different weights, different kind of sizes. They're going to interact differently. They're not all, we don't, I guess, a kind of a model where you hang like three items underneath the aircraft and then you fly along and it just looks like all three items are basically glued together. It's not kind of how it happens. They do need to be kind of separate. So I guess it's going to be a challenge to be able to do that. And you know, to build on what they've got now, if you've watched the other video that I did to show the challenges I had with the AI model and the Sling Load in there, you'll see that yeah, there's a bit to kind of work on there for sure. There's still nothing on how, you know, it's actually going to look for this single hook, but I'm guessing something very similar to what we've got with the Huey, right? With a simple kind of a guide to help you line up with the loads. They didn't say anything either about the kind of the gesture that's also kind of available in some of the missions as well. So I guess it might just be a simple kind of polar type display, show you roughly where the load is in relation to the aircraft, and then kind of go from there. Next then, so it talks about unmatched helicopter flight dynamics that only DCS can provide. I certainly do hope they get this right, as the Miltech flight model was messed up in the first versions. I mean, it was so bad on the. I paid for the full version. It was so bad. I didn't want to fly it. I just thought, you know, what the heck's kind of going on here? But I was confident that they would do something with it, and sure enough, they had feedback, and a couple of versions on. It actually flies pretty well. That's like a D model that they've got in Microsoft Flight Sim for that one. And as regards the model for DCS, well, if you look through the trailers, they certainly showed some of the classic kind of Chinook maneuvers. You know, if you watched air shows or just the aircraft kind of flying around, you could see all that kind of stuff, pinnacle landings and everything else. So I'd certainly expect to see that kind of in the early access version. Next then, it talks about having a basic trim system and AI helper. So this has got the forum chatting away. So okay, there's not all of the functionality that, for example, for those that have got the Apache, for example, will kind of recognize. Same reality, taking the statement unmatched helicopter flight dynamics as being true, then a basic trim system will be fine for an early access module. So it's only for, you know, from my side of things, right? Chinook, as you'll see, is a very stable platform, and they'll account for no DAFX, you know, no AFCS, the forerunner of DAFX. To be honest, I think a major change, or the major difference, should I say, that people will notice when they do eventually kind of put DAFX on with all the various modes and things like that, is how, mainly just coming into land, right? How you can be so precise with the aircraft, especially in really kind of demanding environments as well. I think an EA module will be almost kind of, I think, identical to the Huey version, with, for example, things like basic heading hold, attitude hold, and height hold. The latter, I mean, I hope it's linked up to the RADAL, but probably only like Barrow or you know, something like that, something quite basic. We'll see. So, you know, for those that kind of delve into the F10 map, you just need to be really kind of careful on that and make sure you're not in there too long before you come back and discover that your aircraft is now a burning wreck. So I'll deal with the next 3 points in one. So this is where it talks about having a fully interactive VR-ready cockpits, 2, 6 DOF, so I think it's a depth of field, highly detailed cockpits, and external model. Fully clickable cockpits with mouse interactive control. So this is all good, right? For me, helicopters and DCS go, and VR, should I say, go hand in hand. And this, you know, this is essential, right? Models wise, we've seen the desert skin and the olive green in the trailer. So yeah, it's good that we can hop into the cockpit and pretty much, you know, everything that we can see, we can start kind of adjusting things. Like, oh, okay, some of it, I suppose buttons and switches are going to be there and nothing's going to happen on the other end, but kind of having that for the immersion side of things is a good place to be. Next then, it talks about highly detailed pilots and animations. Okay, it's good to have that from the start, but it seems like, okay, you're going to have the pilot sort of model there, but it's not something that you're interacting with kind of just yet. In terms of the door gunners then, so it will have AI slide gunners equipped with the M60D machine guns. That's pretty much what we'd guessed, right? And it does line up with the trailers, so that one's good. The next feature it's going to release with is the high-level multifunction displays. When it talks about high level, I'm kind of wondering whether this is kind of saying in respects of it's just kind of like the top level of the pages and things like that. So you're not, I don't know, there might be some bit of functionality where you could delve in perhaps like 3-4 pages or something like that, but it's only going to give us the top page, but we'll see. But it does talk about sub pages with the other thing, and I've not seen anyone talk about this in the forums actually, where it talks about the ability to build flight plans in flight, right? So we have seen the MFTs kind of briefly in the trailers. People have picked up on the facts that, okay, you're showing an aircraft kind of flying around and it's clearly got systems turned off and what have you. But, for example, the wheel brakes are on and the aircraft's flying around. But, okay, they're in testing, right? But the ability to kind of adjust flight plans in flight is interesting, right? I'd kind of expect that to be something that they'd link up with kind of almost like multi-crew, but it'd be good to kind of try that out. The next one then is it talks about the radar warning receiver, RWR, and pilot control countermeasure dispenser system with chaff and flares. So thankfully, at least from that side of the house, so countermeasures and what have you, there is an RWR and the ability to throw chaff and flares out. But where the Chinook tends to operate, really the bigger threats are from your shoulder launched missiles, right? So from troops on the ground rather than fighters and SAM sites and stuff like that. I suppose okay, you're gonna have your radar guided guns and things like that they need to avoid, but for me it's probably something that I'm thinking they could have given us a bit more to sort of start off with, and it's one of the things that I wish my Huey has got, because on the Huey it's even more kind of stripped down than that, because they've given you the ability to throw flares out, but that's it. There's basically like no way of giving you any kind of clue as to when you're going to do it, right? This one, it sounds like, okay, you're going to know about radar, but anything else, it's going to be a bit of a kind of keep an eye out and kind of hope for the best. And then the next one, it talks about having an integrated ARC 1X6 radio with voice chat. Okay, so we've got a radio to get us going in the aircraft, which is good. So this is a standard VHF radio, and I think they've also got it in the DCS A10 module. So it's something that's been in game for quite a while. Next then in the was going to come up with the EA release. So it talks about the US Army paint schemes, and we've seen that there's a desert skin and olive green as well. And then finally it talks about the early access manual. I'll certainly be taking a good look at this when it arrives to see what's in it and potentially what's not there as well. So that wraps up what we're going to get on the early access release. Although, whether we're going to get some extra features during that period of time, we're just going to have to wait and see, I guess. So now let's have a look what ED are working on to add to this list. And as you've maybe realised, the EA list it isn't actually that long, right? So there's a lot of stuff to come, okay? So as they're describing it, the after early access launch features, essentially the things that they're still kind of working on, and I guess it's sort of, it's the first bit is getting into a position where they're content to release it, and then it's like, okay, how can we start to build the features up to a full kind of version 1.0, I guess. First of all then is the DAFX trim system and force trim. And again, there's a bit of kind of chit chat on the forum about terminology and things like that. So by trim system, what I'm hoping for is they're talking about all of the functionality, or as close to it, that DAFX gives you, right? So the ability, essentially DAFX or give the pilot, and this is what I was sort of trying to describe before, is you'll see how you can accurately place this giant helicopter on a pin in all sorts of different conditions. It will just make a real kind of difference to how people operate this aircraft. And yeah, when it's engaged, especially things like I don't know, I expect to see some fun kind of things happening on the multiplayer servers, and especially the aerobatics server. You'll see aircraft in some pretty interesting configurations for sure once DAFX turns up, I think. Next one is multi-crew. Now, there was a suggestion it was going to come out in multi-crew, but it looks like they're still working on it. A second crew member can be another player or AI. So, okay, I guess in the pilot model we're getting with EA is just that, just like a model, nothing that you're kind of interacting with, not a gesture or anything like that. However, having the multi-crew is a good option, and it brings with it essentially it kind of gets it up to the same level as the other helicopters that we've got in DCS. Leading on from then, from that point, the next point talks about the flight engineer. So it's almost like these two kind of bullet points are together, right? So it says flight engineer functionality on different stations. Now, what I'm hoping for is that this is player and AI, and the statement before, I did say multi-crew and not multi-pilot after all. So having a buddy being able to hop into, the different like door gunner positions, left and right, or, eventually is obviously on the back as well, or, the co-pilot position, or what would be pretty fun, especially in VR, is to have them kind of hanging out the centre hatch where you got the centre hook, or the hell hole as the US Army calls it. That'd be fun. That'd be quite cool. Kind of hanging out at the bottom in kind of VR, sort of steering your or giving your buddy who's up the front kind of controls how to get into a small space or line up with some cargo or something like that. That'd be good fun. Next one, yeah, I just kind of briefly mentioned it there. So, gunner on the ramp. Yes, please. Yeah, I imagine this will probably be an M60 to start with, I would have thought, and then they'll start looking at the other options, which does actually lead on to the next point, where they talk about different machine gun models for side and ramp gunners. I imagine probably he's going to come with an M60D. The next one that they'll probably chuck in after that, I would have thought, would be the M240H. Personally, what I'd like to see is similar to what the RAF have got. So essentially M134 miniguns in the left and right doors for me, please, and an M60 on the back. Pretty please. Night vision goggles. So again, this is bit of noise about this on the forums. And I suppose I do kind of understand it a little bit, because we did see NVGs being used in the first or one of the first kind of trailers that came out. So I wonder why it's not part of the early access release. Maybe the QA testing is still finding bugs with it that essentially they're not happy to release with. So for when we get it, and if you are going to take it night flying, it's going to be back to old school, right? So it's like dimmer lights and Mark 1 eyeball, and off we go. Heads-up display system is the next bullet point they've got. My guess at what they're actually talking about here is a helmet-mounted display, so HMD, rather than a HUD that's parked on the coaming or that kind of folds down from the roof, right? Especially for those of us that are VR pilots, right? And it also kind of tally with how they use in the actual aircraft, right? Maybe I'm also thinking maybe this is the reason for the delay to the NVGs, because I would have thought they'd kind of work with them sort of hand in hand. There's lots of different HMD out there. They started producing these back in the 1960s. I didn't realise it was that early. The ones I'm just kind of showing on the screen, these are some of the newest ones available, but certainly for the era that's the F model came out, HMDs, there are various kind of options that'd be available to them, and I think that's what they mean rather than a HUD, right? Next one then that they're working on is a missile warning system. This is what I was talking about before, that ideally I'd like to kind of see something like this in the early access version. I know they talk about a radar warning receiver, but yeah, it is essential for me, and yeah, I just need to know what's coming towards me, and that ideally in like a joined up system, that the aircraft is actually pumping out countermeasures already, right? So it's kind of telling me where the threat's coming from, so I've got an idea to perhaps go in the other direction, and then chaff and flare and what have you is getting pumped out at the same time. But we'll see what they have for that. And again, because it's defensive aid suites, there's always going to be the challenges for information that can be used and that sort of stuff. Next one talks about completed MFT pages. Yeah, so we would expect to see the basic aircraft parameters to start with, certainly. So this may be more in the range of more I don't know, mission management side of things potentially. Next one then is the multi-point sling loading. So yeah, spoke about this a little bit towards the start. In that, yeah, I do think it will be a challenge, or at least I'm guessing it's a bit of a challenge to kind of get it right, because you're just moving from 1 to 3, and yeah, to get all of that to work together, and also so it doesn't look rubbish, so it doesn't look like all 3 things are just, like I say, kind of tied together, but they are individual. But as I say, I'm no kind of software expert, but yeah, it's good that they are working on that as part of the next kind of tranche of things to do. Next one, this is kind of I don't know, it's like a subsystem where I'm kind of thinking, all right, okay, that they've called it out specifically, but the engine fire extinguishers and EEP system. So they did kind of say in the statement at the start, but it wasn't really in the bullet points, how they're still working on the damage model. So I'm kind of thinking here that maybe on the EA version when it comes out, they've not fully modeled, for example, individual kind of engine problems, fires and that kind of stuff, because if you did have a single engine fire, then yeah, you'd be looking to the instrument panel in front of you where you've got the 2 T handles, and you're going to be pulling the handles and twisting them for the respective engines. But it looks like certainly in the EA version that's not going to work, or maybe you're just simply not going to get a fire warning in the first place. So it's good to see that that they are on the case with that. It is a relatively simple kind of system, but I suppose it's got to link up to the damage model, right? So it gets damaged, you get a fire warning, and then you need the player needs the ability to be able to try and put the fire out. And then the EEPS system. So I think, I don't know with this one, I know cosmetically, especially for if people are flying around the Afghan maps and Syria maps and stuff like that, you want to have EEPS on, right? Whether they could make it in the game that's not fitting EEPS, I don't know, the chance of your engine being trashed by debris is kind of increased or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but or whether it just be kind of a cosmetic thing, and it's something that, okay, we get the simulation side of things of like starting the EEPS up, etc., but okay, I mean it's good, it's good that they are looking to kind of put those on. Next we have the extended range fuel system. So, and they talk about adding internal fuel tanks. Is going to mean that we can take on those long range challenges. For example, deep like special forces, troop insertions, and things like that. But this is where I think some of these things kind of go hand in hand, right? Because really, if you're going to fit internal fuel tanks and you're going on that kind of mission, you probably want to do it at night. So you probably need NVGs and you probably need a HMD. So it all kind of adds up, right? The other thing is, this is all like bits in the puzzle, right? Is that one of the things that I was talking about before was the ability to do fat cow. You can't do fat cow unless you've got an ERT tank in. There's literally nowhere to kind of hang the pumps and that kind of stuff off. So again, without that, you can't you can't do fat cow. You can't do this. So it's kind of pieces in the puzzle. But it is good to see that again they kind of work. They've identified it and it's something in the plan. Next one, so it talks about autopilot hold modes. Yeah, I kind of covered that earlier on. Paint schemes again. It's a bit of a kind of almost sort of repeating the bullet point that they said before. But on top of that, I mean, because there's loads of kind of great paint schemes out there for Chinook, loads of different nations and that sort of stuff. Also, I guess the ability for users to create their own. I'd love to see like a Bravo November version 718, pretty please. Okay, even if EA don't do it, if I certainly imagine that one of the users will create one quite early doors for sure. Next, then they talk about training missions. Yeah, this is going to be essential for new users. Perhaps it could be the case that there's people that are buying Chinook that have never bought a helicopter kind of module before. Maybe they're never flown helicopters as well. I mean, as I said several times, it is a stable platform, but it does take a bit of getting used to. As far as the EA version, I think I probably know enough just to kind of crack on and kind of get on without sort of much help. But yeah, I think it's definitely good to have training missions in there for sure. Where there's a gap, I guess people will come in and make YouTube videos with tutorials and things like that. So yeah, we'll have to see for that one. Next one talks about additional missions. Okay, I must have missed this. The missions fit a bit in the first place. I don't remember kind of reading that, but okay, missions would be good. And then finally it talks about full manual. So yeah, as much information as possible. And again, there's those restrictions. We're talking about an aircraft which is there's hundreds of them around the world, right? Chinook is not kind of going anywhere, so there's definitely going to be certain restrictions as to what information is available. So there you have it, the early access features and the in-work features of the DCSF model Chinook. So yeah, what do you think? So yes, there is a short delay, but I'd rather that the basics were there before we get our hands on it. For me, I think I can live without the full DAFX functionality for now. There are some features that I've discussed in my previous videos which are not available yet, but I think that's more to do with the roll side of things. For example, fat cow, as I said before, if you don't have the internal fuel tanks, extended range tanks, should I say, then you're just not going to be able to do that in the first place anyway, right? And things like multiple sling loads, it would have been nice to kind of start that off, but I think once you get well drilled with using the center hook, when they add on the forward and aft hooks and a bit more functionality, especially for those of us that have got EA, then yeah, it kind of gives you something to build on, right? Your skill as a Chinook pilot. There's also, there's not much kind of mention of the new kind of logistics element, which I think, is perhaps a bigger beast in general to kind of tackle. I don't know, they might kind of talk about it with this big kind of update, because as I said before, it's not just Chinook, it's the Afghan map, and loads of stuff is coming out. You've got, was it Flaming Cliffs 24 and everything else. Generally, you know, I've got beta type expectations, right? In that, I know there's going to be bugs. There's going to be the odd kind of annoyance. I'm prepared for that. And I also know that, you know, that as a community we can kind of help fix that, right? So we can feed it back to Eagle Dynamics, and then we can start to move this module forward. But yeah, personally, I just rather kind of get on with it and see where we go from there. Okay, what do you think then? Safe flying, everyone. Bye bye.